Welcome back. You're watching live from Paris on France 24. It's time now for Media Watch France, when we take a look at what's making headlines here in France. And to do that tonight is Rebecca Barron. Good evening to you,
Hello, Laura.
Rebecca. Now, understandably, journalists have been digging into the past of Anders Breivik, the self-confessed perpetrator of those twin attacks in Norway. And it's turned out that his father lives right here in France.
That's right. The suspect is the son of a retired diplomat who has, lo and behold, been found living in a tiny village, Cournanel, in the Haut Département of southwestern France. He moved there a couple of months ago. Just 700 inhabitants thereabouts in this village, which has been completely swamped since we found out that Jens Breivik is living there, and they were camped out outside his villa, hoping that he would come out and speak to them, obviously give his side of events. But fearing for his privacy, he certainly didn't do that. That hasn't stopped a splash in the regional paper Midi Libre, and it says father of the Oslo killer talks, not to them, but to TV2, which is a Norwegian television channel. He has actually had an interview with them, filmed from behind, so obviously we don't know anything about what he looks like. He says, I was reading the news on the internet and suddenly I saw his name and photo. It was a huge shock, which I think is
very strange, weren't they, for a long time?
That's right, 15 years they haven't seen each other. And I can just imagine, you know, the man sitting there, suddenly coming across this article and thinking, well, he set his child on a path through life, and he's turned into a man that he cannot recognise, that he cannot empathise with. Apparently he divorced the suspect's mother shortly after the boy's birth, and as you say, 15 years they hadn't seen each other. It's absolutely terrible, reads the headline of Sud-Ouest, which is another regional newspaper, Southwest, and he doesn't mince his words when it comes to speaking about his son. He's got a couple of really tough things to say. I think that ultimately, he says, he should have taken his own life rather than killed so many people, so suicide would have been a better option. And we know that the suspect says that in a way he was kind of encumbered by this crusade that he felt he had to go on. His father said he would have been better off killing himself than acting, and police are stationed around his home to protect him at the moment, the father, because I think he's cautious. You know, he's concerned that there might be some kind of retribution against him as the man who fathered this child.
All right, now Islamophobia, or perceived Islamophobia, is a very controversial issue here in France, of course, and politicians today have been almost trying to score some political capital out of this, because we are just 10 months ahead of the election. It's to be expected, isn't it?
You're right, they've been jumping on the bandwagon, which is a rather unfortunate turn of events, really, given, you know, the tragedy of this weekend. But politicians find ways, as you say, to score political points. The Socialist Party held a minute's silence in its headquarters, Solferino, and that's a way, really, for them to start putting pressure on the far-right Front National, the National Front Party, given that just a few months ago in March, polls showed that Marine Le Pen was more popular, that's the leader of the Front National, than Nicolas Sarkozy. So politicians across the political spectrum using this as an opportunity to underline the fact that anti-Islamic sentiment did play a role in motivating this massacre. Let's take a look at the headline in La Tribune. After the attack, the populist right in the hot seat, under the spotlight, you know, pressure bearing down on them. Socialist Party presidential contender Manuel Valls says there is a link between the hate speech of the far right and the violence of the murderer. And now there's been also a bit of an argument between Front National and the best-known organisation that opposes racism and anti-Semitism here in France, known as MRAP. They said on Sunday the Front National does bear responsibility for the poisonous atmosphere, as they put it, that's hanging over not just France but all of Europe. Of course, we've seen the rise of the far right in the Netherlands, we've seen it in Denmark and also in Sweden. So the Libération newspaper also picking up on that, saying European right-wing parties finding themselves in the firing line. Front National is no exception, and of course that party has had to defend itself and says it will take MRAP to court and anyone else found making similar accusations. An unfortunate political spat erupting here in France.
OK, all right, well, let's leave that story aside for the time being and talk about a gathering of Jehovah's Witnesses, quite a lot of them.
Absolutely, 23,000 of them. They congregated in the northern Paris suburb of Villepinte at the Parc des Expositions, which is like a conference centre. Speeches were there, Bible studies. They also had a mass baptism. And you might think, well, why is the French media making a fuss about this? But that's because 3 weeks ago there was a very important, very seminal ruling that handed down by the European Court of Human Rights. And they said, well, they came down on the side of the Jehovah's Witnesses after 15 years of battles that the JWs lost in the French courts. If we take a look at what the newspaper Libération is saying about it, with a rather cheeky, it has to be said, headline in the paper, which suggests Jehovah's Witnesses are pepped up, they say, as they wait for the apocalypse. Of course, that's their belief that Jesus will be coming back for an apocalyptic battle one of these days. Well, why are they feeling better? That's because Jehovah's Witnesses are not a cult, but a religion, says the European Court of Human Rights. France has been classifying them as a dangerous sect and actually asked them to pay back all taxes on donations from their members during a period in the 1990s. ECHR says, well, that's not fair. That means that that these religious people can't practice their religion because they won't have any money. So very, very good news for the Jehovah's Witnesses. Let's take a very quick listen, if we can, to the leader of the French Federation here.
This decision shows we were right. For the first time, France has been found guilty of trying to curtail freedom of religion. This truly is unprecedented.
All right, finally then, from looking towards the heavens, something coming out of the heavens.
Absolutely, it's a little bit a little bit Twilight Zone here. Speculation's been swirling about a sighting of a UFO last Tuesday in Brittany, or above Brittany. A very loud bang was heard at 5:15 in the morning. It turns out it was a meteorite which sort of exploded, as they are wont to do, in the atmosphere. Now, normally they are sort of reduced to dust, but this time it seems to have been quite a big beast, and shards have fallen around the area. There's a report in Le Figaro newspaper with an interview from a scientist at the Space Science Research Centre in the city of Rennes, and they're saying that actually they really hope that they can get their hands on bits of this meteorite before meteorite hunters do. Looters will actually try and pick up the bits, maybe put in their collection, so the race is on.
All right, Rebecca Bowring with Meteorite, many thanks indeed. And it's time now for Web News.